What's up, everybody? This is Mr. Second Passport. Today we're going to cover 20 things or 20 ways that Ecuadorian builders can basically screw your place up if you're not careful when building or renovating a home in Ecuador, right? Now, I did have the fortune to build a house from scratch on the coast a couple years back with a couple friends of mine who no longer live in Ecuador. And it was an interesting experience, and I definitely saw a lot of what I'm about to cover today with you, right? And just being up in the INTAG this past week with my friend who built his house from scratch and us kind of talking about the process a little bit reminded me a little of the, the challenges that I went through are pretty much the same. So I thought I'd share them with you, especially if you try to build a house from abroad. It can be a big problem for you if you're not careful, right? And you should definitely have someone local checking these things as they build, so you don't get any nasty surprises, right? When the project's supposedly all done and it's too late, right? So without further ado, number one. This is the biggest thing, and I've seen it as a big problem. It was a problem with our build, and it's the Ecuadorians, for whatever reason, they just forget or they don't know how. I don't know what exactly goes with that, or they just don't think it's important, right? It's one of those, but they just don't seal the windows well, right? And then if you build out a project and it goes vacant for a bit and it rains a bit, you'll come and you'll see sometimes puddles on the ground, and you'll wonder what happened, but you'll see the watermarks on the walls from the windows in most cases. Number two, this is kind of a big one. For whatever reason, when they're building, doors will often just not shut properly, not nicely. Locks sometimes, you'll have to wiggle the door to while you're turning the key in order to get it open, stuff like that. So it just doesn't mesh like it should. Number three, Ecuadorian builders don't really soundproof very well, and they'll almost always put in the thinnest glass available here, which is the 4mm. If you don't say anything in contrary, right? Okay. Number four, tiling. Almost all builders in Ecuador will tell you that they can lay tile, but actually it's a skill, and most of them say they can do it, but when you actually see the work, you realize they really can't, right? You'll notice it's not laid perfectly correctly and level, and sometimes, and a lot of times, like what we had to do, you might have to tear it up and start again. Number five is, for whatever reason, sliding glass doors. Maybe it's the quality of the material, or they just don't know how to install them. But a lot of times in Ecuador, I've seen when sliding doors get installed, they just break or crack naturally, right, rather quickly on their own. Number six, right, this is a truism that nobody can deny pretty much all over Ecuador. For whatever reason, I cannot figure this out for the life of me, but Ecuadorians will almost never just install screens on the windows. It's like they don't care, or they don't think it's necessary, or they just live with the bugs, or maybe bugs don't bite Ecuadorians. I have no idea why they don't put screens on the windows, but they often won't. It's something extra. You will often have to insist and make sure they do, and it might not be included in the price, the quoted price of window installs, unless you specify beforehand. Number seven, most houses in Ecuador, especially when you're building from scratch, will not include automatically or naturally a laundry room, believe it or not, like we have customary in the States and in North America. So why? Well, a lot of people, especially like on the coast, they will throw a few lines up and not even have a dryer, right, and dry their clothes outside, stuff like that. So it's a different culture, and definitely something to keep in mind. Number nine, this is a big one just due to the stature of Ecuadorians, right? And that is, they will often build your project with particularly low, maybe doorways or low ceilings, or especially low overheads in stairways, right? Just because Ecuadorians undeniably are a shorter race than North Americans in general, right? Number 10 has happened to me in multiple occasions, including properties where I have rented, and that is the inner doors. If you're not careful, they will install some super hollow, super thin, almost like paper doors that hold absolutely zero noise out. I think they do this for price, or maybe as I am thinking, mainly Ecuadorians just don't seem to care about noise at night like we do, and you just sleep through it. So if you don't want the super cheap hollow doors that you could probably put your fist through and it doesn't hold back any noise whatsoever, then you probably want to pick out your own doors, not include this in the project itself, maybe put it as an aside, stuff like that. So something to think about. Number 11, super common in Ecuador, I've seen especially in older structures, so like maybe when you're renovating or something, but steep, particularly steep, like way too steep stairways and stuff, inner and outer in Ecuador, or no railings on the stairways. I've seen it all, and it's very, very common, especially, like I said, on older, but sometimes newer structures too. Number 12, super common, you know, with such an amazing technology like LED lighting, so readily accessible, you'd think they'd only build with LED lighting, but often they don't here in Ecuador. They'll just put a little socket fixture on the top of the ceiling, and they'll hang a light down from it, you know, that you can screw in. And that is a light, according to Ecuadorians, right? But it's obviously a lot nicer and a lot more energy efficient to install LED. Number 13, I've seen this happen, believe it or not, 2021. You would think this wouldn't happen for a century now, but they do. I guess Ecuadorians can live without hot water, because I've seen literally and heard horror stories of no hot water connections being put in a new build. And I think the gringo I talked to just assumed that, you know, how could you not put in a hot water connection, right, to a shower and a sink or whatever. But they didn't, and all they put in, and they finished the wall and everything, and they had to chop up the wall and everything just to put in that hot water line. So I mean, they often in Ecuador, they will not put in hot water connections, just because I guess they don't live with hot water connections sometimes, the people building your house. I don't know, especially in the warmer coastal climate. So it's definitely something you want to keep an eye on and be careful when you're building or having something built here in Ecuador. Number 14, very rarely will you have, especially in the lower middle class places, hot water to your kitchen sink and or your bathroom sinks. They just don't put it in. They just want to save the $30, right, or whatever on the handle, and just have the one handle for the cold water in the sink, instead of it being a full, you know, going both ways kind of thing. Number 15, if you're lucky enough to get hot water installation piping, right, to all your gadgets and whatever, you better check that it's not that red PVC, because, and if it is, then make sure it's kind of out of the wall, maybe behind the wall, but something easy to get to, because, you know, as you may know, I ran a hotel here in Ecuador for like 7+ years, and it was always problematic in the structure I was leasing. And just all the time leaks, T's and elbows, just always busting. I think my theory is China sends all their grade C crap to Ecuador that wouldn't probably pass code in North America. I don't know, but it just seems to break a lot more. And if it's sunk inside a cement wall, that's going to be a pain and costly every time that a hot water installation busts on you out of nowhere, especially if you're a typical gringo and like the water really hot, steamy hot, you'll see that happen. So instead, try to do your hot water installations in copper. Number 16, this is a big one on the beach. You want to be careful. A builder might try to save a little bit of money by going and scooping sand off the beach, right? Make sure you know and you check where he's buying the sand, right? Because not only is that obviously horrible for the environment, it's terrible for your house, and obviously it's illegal. 17, this is a big one when you're building anew in Ecuador. You want to check the cement, maybe with an engineer or an architect or someone that knows, not just a random builder, because I'm sure like for their other projects, they probably buy the cheapest cement out there. But in Ecuador, the cheap stuff and the premium, there's actually a huge difference in quality. So you want to be careful maybe to not go the cheapest route on the cement when you're building something that you hope will be around for decades to come. Number 18, this is a big one. If you don't look at the plans right, you might be unexpectedly surprised, especially on the coast. Most people build on the coast anew with a parking space below the house, right? And the house kind of on columns or stilts, you could say. Number 19, local builders might insist on building like a nice looking bamboo fence or something, especially on the coast, and it looks nice at first, but I highly recommend you do not build with wood or bamboo fencing on the coast, because that's a huge amount of expense and product you're going to have to refinish if you're right on the beach way more often than you'd like, almost yearly or bi-yearly. Number 20, last but not least, obviously you want to really check your roof before you accept a project from a builder, and maybe while you're building, because I've seen Ecuadorians struggle with leaky roofs for like months at a time, and oh, it's terrible. They just can't quite fix it, and then they tell you it's fixed, and then it's not fixed the next time it pours, you realize. So anyway, this is definitely something you want to check on before you accept work down here in Ecuador. Anyway, these are 20 things that I've seen with my own eyes and heard horror stories firsthand. I'm Mr. Second Passport. If you like this, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button below to be notified of more videos just like this. Take care.